Welcome to A Word from the Wise, the Solwise podcast. We come to you the beginning of each month where we talk about products that we do, news in the industry, and just anything that we think you might be interested in. You can hear us on Spotify, Amazon Music, we can be seen on video on YouTube, or just find us wherever you normally get your podcasts from. Hello, welcome to the Word from the Wise from Solwise, our monthly podcast. I'm back here with Daniel again, and today we're going to talk about the guest internet hotspot solution. So in a nutshell, Daniel, what is the guest internet hotspot solution?
The guest internet hotspot solution consists of a device which, if you're watching on video, you can see here, which you would connect to like your network, and what it does is it allows anything else that's plugged into the hotspot gateway to be controlled by it. In particular, it allows you to set up what's called a captive portal or landing page. Those are the technical names you'll hear. So that when someone connects to the network on their device, rather than just connecting through straight away, they are brought to a web page in which they need to receive access in some way, log in perhaps.
So what sort of setting would you be using this? So this is like for putting in a cafe or something like that, for sharing Wi-Fi?
It's the kind of thing that you would use, and I'm sure you'll have seen before on your own devices, in places like cafes, restaurants, hotels, resorts, that kind of thing. Like just things ran for the public to connect their devices in, basically.
Could you use it in a business where you get a lot of guests, do you think?
Yeah. If any kind of business where you've got members of the public coming in, which you want to have this web page that they need to log in on because it looks good and professional, and also there's benefits in terms of it stops them from being able to have direct access to like your actual network.
Yeah, so if you had a site,
the scenes of it.
So if you had a site where, for instance, a lot of contractors coming in, that might be quite handy, mightn't it?
Yeah, because anyone that connects to your network via one of these hotspot gateways, as you can kind of tell because it's called a gateway, they're isolated from your main network, and also isolated from anything else that's on the gateway, so they completely can't do anything except basically usually just use the internet. That's what you'd usually.
So this box that we've got here is the actual hotspot gateway, but how does the customer, where does the Wi-Fi come from then?
There is one version of this kind of device called we call it the GISK1, which broadcasts its own Wi-Fi signal. So that's good if you're in, say, a small scale environment like 1 room, 2 rooms, small building.
Or a cafe or something like that.
Yeah. But often, obviously, if you want the Wi-Fi to be, say, outside or spread across a larger area, a large building with lots of rooms, you'll probably need multiple sources of Wi-Fi, which you'll do by having access points, Wi-Fi access points. And any Wi-Fi access point you have connected into this device or into the network on the other side of this device will be controlled by it. So anyone that connects to the Wi-Fi of these access points you have set up, it brings them through to the landing page. Yeah,
so just it essentially controls people's access to the internet using other Wi-Fi devices.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense then. So you said about a landing page. Is that something that you can customise to your own look?
Yeah, so first of all, the most straightforward way, when you're setting up one of these devices, you're brought through to a wizard for the quick setup, which is very easy to use, and that allows you to do basic things like choose a background, enter in, like, say, your business name, if you have a logo or something, any details like that, and also it lets you choose what login type you want to have. So there's a few different ways you can log in. Probably the most common way is through using codes. So you can generate a series of random codes, just strings of text, which you can then print out or just copy down and hand out to new guests as they come in. And then when they get brought through to the login page, they have to enter this code that you've given them.
So is that an individual code to an individual customer, for instance?
It can be. It doesn't have to be. You can, when you create the code, you can specify if you want it to be one code per person, or if you want one code to be able to be reused for lots of people.
So you could do, for instance, if you were in a cafe and you had a blackboard, for instance, you could have that code on that for that day, and everyone uses the same code.
Yeah, rather than a standard Wi-Fi password, because at any of the Wi-Fi access points we talked about that you'd have connected into this, they can all be open and unsecured because you're not relying on the Wi-Fi to be providing you security. You've got this gateway for the security. And another thing I'll mention you can do on the codes is, along with having, you can choose how many people can be connected onto each code. You can set how long the code will last, like you can say it expires after an hour or 24 hours. And you can specify if you want a certain bandwidth limit, so what kind of speeds people have access to when connected. Because if you had one person connected that was, say, like streaming something on Netflix in 4K or something, and it was taking up all the bandwidth, that will slow down everyone else on the network, which you don't really want. But using these codes, you can set it so that each user of a certain code can only get, like, say, 5 meg, 10 meg.
So based on that then, could you say, if you were giving them away with your coffees or something, so you get a latte, so you get a half hour, and the limitation is whatever it is, and then you buy a cappuccino and you get an hour, so you could do that within the same setup?
Sure.
Yeah.
You can be creative about that.
And can you limit the content as well? So, for instance, you don't want people watching hardcore porn in your cafe. So can you limit that sort of thing as well, or worse?
There's a content filter you can enable. It requires setting up an account on a third-party platform called OpenDNS.
Right.
It's free to do. You create an account there, and then you can link it to your captive portal, and then they have like a pre-done list of sites that they block, which you can also go into and edit however you wish.
So can you add new sites to that list?
Yeah.
And with the with the wizard that you mentioned about and the setting up for this, do you really need to be a network technician, or could somebody who is the cafe owner, for instance, could they set this up themselves in all likelihood?
It's dead easy. The wizard goes through every bit you would need, like checking that it has network access, choosing what kind of login type you want, the basic looks of the page, and that stuff is presented in a very easy way. You can just get through, just clicking your mouse in 2 minutes, and it's fine. And then if you did have a bit more network knowledge and you wanted to do some other more technical things, that's all in there too. So it covers both worlds.
And could you charge people for the service?
Yes, not with this device here, which is the JSR2. That one doesn't have payment facilities, but every other model we do has the ability to make people pay to log in.
So is this one, this R2 is like the baby of the R
sort of,
ranges,
this is the simplest one. It's got the lowest number. So. And then every other one, how you would do it with the payment facilities is you have to set up an account on PayPal Business and then link that to the hotspot. And then when you want to charge guests, they don't need a PayPal account. They can do it with PayPal, or they can just use the credit cards and enter in the card details, which aren't stored in the gateway. You would collect them yourself, so it's on your behalf to do that. But you can have like different levels of payment, and then based on that you can hand out different codes that perhaps have faster speeds, so you can do that kind of thing to incentivize.
So we said about we've got the R2 here, and that being the baby of the range, as it were, other than that Wi-Fi one that's
which is
the cheap and cheerful one.
GIS-K1 is the Wi-Fi one.
So what's the difference between the rest of the R ranges? So you've got like an R2, R6, R10 and so on. So what's the difference?
R20, R40. So you can kind of go in order based on the numbers in the names, that each one is just a slightly better version of the previous. Other than the lack of payment facilities in the R2, there aren't any significant differences in what they can actually do, like what facilities they offer. They all have the same interface, they all do the same things. So the main difference is just basically the how powerful they are, the throughput capacity. Like for instance, this one, although it's got gigabit ports, it has a maximum throughput of 100 meg, which should be enough for your standard small scale scenario where you've got, say, like maximum of, I don't know, 10, 20 people in at once that are perhaps just
So it's about how many
social
users
media.
can connect to it.
It's about how many users you have and what they're going to be doing. Because you know, if it's like a cafe or something, you're not going to really have people streaming lots of TV shows or anything like that. So you don't need too much. But then it goes up from there. So like the R4 has got 150 meg capacity, R6 is 200 meg, and it mostly goes up like that, like in approximately the same level each time.
So this little one, for instance, you wouldn't use in a conference space, but you could look at something like the R40 and you could use that in a conference space with hundreds of people.
The R40 has more ports to go along with that. This one is, you can't see, but it's got 5 ports, I believe.
Let's have a look. We'll turn it around for those that are watching.
Yep, good,
yeah, well
ports.
done. Yeah, product knowledge being sensible there.
But obviously it goes up from there as they get bigger. And I suppose one of the details, some of the later models, I think from the R10 upwards, offer dual WAN. So, which is a way you can get a faster throughput, because obviously if you've got 2 WAN inputs going in, that's double the speed, and it alternates between, like if one user connects, they'll be on one WAN input, and then if a second user connects, they'll go into the second, and it rotates like that. So you've got double the throughput through any of those dual WAN models if you have a dual WAN setup to go into it.
Whilst you were talking about ports, it made me wonder, can you add a switch to it so that you could have extra access
definitely.
points?
Yeah. That's what a lot of people will do. Any device that you have coming out of one of these ports will be obviously controlled by it, and then anything else you have connected into that device will be controlled by it, and so on and so on. So you can have a switch going into it, and then anything going into the switch will be controlled.
Right.
And if you had another switch into that, you can go endlessly onwards from there.
Yeah. Are they secure? Does it have a firewall built in or anything like that?
Yeah, they are secure. So as I mentioned, they've got the client isolation, which means anyone that connects onto this and is controlled by it can't access anything on the WAN side of it. So they can't access anything on your main network. They can only see things that are also connected to that kind of portal, and really they can't even do that because there's the client isolation, so they can't even like ping other people that are on the same network to completely learn. So yeah, they're very secure in that way with the firewall that they've got in.
So they're secure, obviously, with the firewall and all of that. How about from a GDPR point of view, collecting people's data? How does that all work?
So that's the thing that has become concerns since GDPR came in about 5 years ago now.
Yeah, 2018. Gosh, where's the time gone,
eh? And yeah, so Guest Internet obviously were on the ball with that, and it does comply with GDPR and the legislation that says anyone that runs kind of hotspot service, they need to be able to catalog certain details about anyone that connects in case that person that connects in does anything illegal that's picked up.
Right.
That's something that everyone that runs this kind of hotspot service has to do, and so Guest Internet make it very easy to do that.
And we have all those legal disclaimers on our website as well, so if anybody wanted to read further about that.
And on Guest Internet's website they have their own version of it. And essentially how it complies is it will store certain details, such as MAC addresses and like the name of the device, whatever the device has, if it has like an actual name, that'll be saved. And then depending on the login method that you've set it to use, so I spoke about how there's the CURD method, which most people use. Obviously you've got the CURD details, which will usually be only used by one device, but if not, you've got the MAC address. You can also have certain login methods, like they have to enter in some personal details, which are then emailed over. So they enter in a name. They can enter in anything you ask of them. So I don't know what else you want other than the name for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But anything they enter is then sent over via email to an email that you would input into it, like if you've got your own business email. Yeah. So in terms of the stuff that's saved, obviously GDPR requires most things to be saved for 6 months. The hotspot itself won't save much. You'll save some of the code details if you let it, if you don't delete them. But for the most part, the onus is on you to save any details that are emailed over. So you would just keep them in your email inbox, or if you're particularly techy, you can input like a server to store them on in the
Put them in a database,
in the configuration. Yeah.
Does it have the facility where a customer can get in touch and say, because via GDPR you have to be able to accept that somebody wants to be removed from your system? Is it easily removed as well then?
Yeah, well, as I say, none of it's really saved.
Right. Of course, it goes into the email.
So,
I can mention that. Yeah, so it depends on how you save it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then after 6 months, you would just want to delete any details that you've kept. But
Yeah.
as I say, that's all on your end.
So I just want to take us back to when we were talking about the types of access points that you might put on there. Could you have, you kind of covered this earlier, but I just want to clarify it for people. Can you broadcast like a guest network and a staff network?
Yeah.
And similar, like that type of thing?
Yeah, so it does somewhat depend on the access points that you're using, if they can provide multiple SSIDs at once. But whereas on the one hand you can provide a Wi-Fi access to guests and staff just by having some access points that are connected into this gateway, and then some access points that just bypass it, that are just connected straight to your router or your main network, and you give those an SSID for staff to use, and then the other one's an SSID for guests.
So when you say SSID, do you want to explain what that means to the people who don't know what that
SSID
means?
just means like
The name.
an individual Wi-Fi broadcast. Yeah.
So like it could say kitchen or whatever.
Yeah.
That type, yeah.
Yeah, like if we had this kind of thing, it'd be like Solwise staff and Solwise guest would be the two.
Right, I
names,
see,
and
yeah,
Like
yeah.
guest wouldn't have any security because it would be open to connect to, and then you've got the captive portal, whereas then staff would have its own Wi-Fi security.
And can you use any access point or?
Yeah, no compatibility issues at all. You can use anything.
Mm-hmm.
But getting back to what we were just discussing, if you perhaps wanted to be a bit more efficient and not have some access points that are separate and then some that are controlled by this, you could just have access points that are controlled by this if those access points have the ability to do multiple SSIDs and VLAN support. If you're technical with how to do VLANs, you can have one SSID, which is the guest one, which is just normal and is controlled by this, and then you can have a VLAN on your second SSID to bypass this gateway,
Right.
even though the access point's connected into the gateway.
It's quite a powerful bit of kit, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does it have cloud support?
Yes, there is also cloud support. It's a guest internet service, but it's free to use.
And
So you have to create an account.
And what can you do with the cloud then?
It's just about configuring the settings, and I suppose also looking at the usage data, because you can look at stats on usage through the interface of this, as well as say you can view all the current codes that are being used, individual connections, kick people off if you need to.
So does that
see
mean,
how much bandwidth is being used, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So does that mean then that you can remotely manage it as well?
Yeah, you can remotely monitor it and manage it without necessarily being on site.
Yeah.
So obviously there's.
So if you were a reseller, for instance, and you were putting these in a bunch of places for people who were not technical, and then they said, "Oh, we've got this problem," you could just log in and help them sort their problem out.
You can change any
Maybe,
settings,
yeah.
check if anything's going wrong, update firmware if you need to. Lots of things you can do.
Can you create new codes remotely?
Yes,
So, yeah.
That's in the settings interface. So anything you can do in the settings interface, you can do it on site or via cloud.
Right. Well, I think we've covered most things there are to say about that. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I think we've answered all the questions I've got here.
Yeah, I think we're good. One more thing I'll mention about the login page that I suppose I didn't go into. So along with the code login and the email login and payment facilities, if you wanted to have this kind of thing to cover yourself for, as we mentioned about GDPR, you need this kind of gateway to protect yourself from just having anyone connect and then to potentially do something dodgy, but you're not too interested in making people log in with codes or emails and stuff like that. You can have it set that when they connect, or they get brought to this landing page, but all they have to do is click a button saying they agree to certain terms, and that's it. You can do that as well.
It can be a very open if you want it to be.
And if you are techie, if you've got, say, a custom website that you've coded in HTML that you would rather use than the basic template login page that this device has on offer, you can enter in a custom HTML login page to use instead. Or if you've got a web page that you want people to go onto but isn't necessarily designed to have this kind of login, you can set it so that once they've logged in, they're automatically redirected to your own page.
Right.
And there's one more login method I've just remembered, which isn't supported by all of them. I think they're kind of trying to phase it out, but it's still there for some. Is a social media login, so people can log in with their Facebook accounts.
Right.
So
then you could get them to like your page on Facebook and things like that, couldn't you?
Yeah, that'd be the advantage.
That's the idea behind that. And I suppose if you can collect the email addresses, you can do mailers out to people then as well, can't you? If they've agreed to that as well.
Yes.
Under the GDPR rules, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's given us a very broad overview, so thank you very much, Daniel. And I guess if anybody's got any questions or queries or want to discuss it further, they can always give us a ring or pop us an email across, can't they? And we'll help where we can, because every indeed, well, and every situation is likely to be different, isn't it? So we have got a lot of these out there.
Quite a lot you can do with these. So
yeah,
there's a lot to cover.
Excellent. So if anyone's got any questions, just give us a ring or pop us an email across, sales@solwise.co.uk.
I'll type it in the comments below.
Yeah, we'll get our producer Sarah to put it in the comments below so that then anyone can get in touch if they need to. So thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for watching, or thank you for listening, whichever you chose to do. If you normally listen, by all means come and have a look at us over on YouTube if you want to scare yourselves. If not, just find us wherever you get your normal podcasts from. Thank you very much. See you next month.